been falling in love with last Epoch, so I'm doing what I do best, and that's creating a Necromancer build with minion focus. This build has been working great for early endgame. It's soloed me through all the content in the game so far, so I want to showcase it so you guys can have an idea of what I've styled my build around and where I kind of plan to go with it in the future. There's a ton of builds that focus on volatile zombie, which is essentially just summoning exploder zombies, but I wasn't really trying to play that way. Instead, I want to build a minion army, so let me show you what I did. Bye. I'll have an exact build in the description so you can just reference it, but I want to talk through why I'm doing this and what I plan on doing in the future, so stick around and check this out. So let's talk about the skills that I use on this build. First things first, I use Rip Blood, and Rip Blood is essentially just my button to keep me tanky. If I'm ever stationary and my minions are going to town, I'm just going to hold Rip Blood on an enemy because it's constantly going to keep healing me and actually gaining my mana while I'm using this ability. This is my layout right here, but I'm going to put it in the skill tree to break it down for you. Moral of the story, I'm speccing heavily into healing and speed of those blood rips to get me more health as fast as possible. Then we're gonna get into Summon Skeleton. Summon Skeleton I've been using since the very beginning, and this is a main staple of the build. Instead of really focusing on making range or melee combat skeletons, I stuck to bow skeletons, and I actually played into fire because this build heavily scales off of fire and necrotic damage. So you'll see here, I went into skeletons, I had some additional skeletons. And then I really spec into, you know, attack speed and then fire multi-shot arrow, just because I believe it is super good for these skeletons, especially when you get armor rip, because these guys are constantly attacking very fast, reducing the armor of the enemies in front of you, igniting and doing a ton of fire damage to the people that are in front of you as well. I spec'd in recently into Dread Phalanx just because I need a little more tankiness on these minions, and this is the one thing that I kind of go back and forth on. It's nice to have Dread because it does increase the health and damage of these minions by a ton, but it reduces the quantity, and sometimes it's nice just to have a trillion of them unloading. But honestly, realistically, as you get more into the end game, as I am now in the mid 70s, you want some beefiness on these guys, so I spec into some lifesteal as well from them, just to keep them into the fight, but some of my equipment also has minion lifesteal, etc. So like I said, keeping these guys into archers with fire, would shoot a ton of arrows as fast as possible, sweeping mobs in front of you. Then we get into the skeletal mages. Very similar story. I want to spec fire mages and fire alone, so I go through buffing a ton of their attack. I also ensure that my skeletal mage is my traversal ability. Right here at Grave Passage is a teleport every time you click the mage button. This is extremely necessary on this build because you need to have some sort of traversal skill, and you can traverse the entire screen. There is no limitation. It's really good for map traversal over large areas, or you can actually use it to jump over rivers, etc., open areas of the map, so you can get to another side of the map instantaneously without having to figure out how to get there. It is amazing. It is necessary. I highly suggest putting this on the build. And then, like I said down here, I remove mages that aren't infernal mages, so this is really good for removing mages and ensuring that I have the fire mages only. From here on, I'm essentially just planting in some damage and some lifesteal and some crit chance and move speed, more spell damage here. You pretty much just want to make these guys super strong as possible. Then we want to get into our golem. As is tradition with this build, we're turning him into the fire golem, and our main goal here is to make him as beefy, as fast, attack speedy, and as tanky as possible while drawing a ton of fire. So here we've got attack speed and move speed, fire and spell, fire damage. We make him the fire golem, like I said. Movement speed down here. Your golem will heal you every time he attacks. This is a really strong ability to have. And then he'll generate more threat down here, making sure he's the focus of your party at all times. This is the meat and potatoes of the build, and where you do a lot of your active skill summoning. This is a skill I absolutely love. Summoning Wraiths are these very fast in attack speed heavy Wraiths that walk around with scythes. I build them to have a chance at fire as well, but really focus on crit chance and healing off crit. They're constantly losing HP as they are attacking, but you keep summoning them, and you can use them as tanks by dropping them right in front of enemies heading towards your direction. You'll see me as I'm doing this gameplay in the background, constantly summoning Wraiths in front of everybody that's coming towards me, so my Wraiths begin attacking, and they start focusing the Wraiths, because in reality, Wraiths don't really matter as they're going to run out of health immediately anyway, but they do a ton of damage, and I'm constantly summoning them around using my blood rip. This is the majority of the skill usage in this build is the summon Wraiths. So depending on pieces of gear, you can actually get more skeletons out and more mages, etc. out, but without having any specific gear that adds additional skeletons besides the stuff I get in my passive tree, which I'll show shortly, I can get anywhere from 10 to 16 to 17 minions. And if I get rid of the large skeletons and double up there, I can get over 20 minions out on the battlefield at a time, doing a ton of damage while leading constantly with my tank. But the key thing I will tell you is I'm constantly using my skeletal movement ability, which you can actually set up in the skill bar here. And this is something I would highly recommend checking out. It's on A instinctively. Right here. Minion attack command. I put it on D because it's just instinctive for me in Heroes of the Storm when I'm using Rexar and Misha. But D is your move skeletons button or attack with them button. And it's really nice to press that in front of you at all times when you're turning corners, when you want to focus them on a boss. Press D or your A button to focus them onto that minion. And it's really good to place them in front of you. It also gets your skeletal tank or your golem out in front of you at all times. A really strong move. Some of the gear that I've got so far, this is one I just picked up. I think this is great. This gives you 1 skill point into all of your minion abilities with this mandate scythe. Ton of fun to use. It also makes it so they're constantly healing you every time they deal damage. This scythe is awesome. I just got it. I hadn't seen it in the game before. And then outside of that, I'm just trying to get skeletal minion damage. I want to get fire damage, and I want to get necrotic damage. That is the main skeletal minions. So you want summoning fire and summoning necrotic as much as possible. Outside of that, you know, healing off minion damage, crit for minions, etc. Stuff like that is really nice to have. Let's get into the passives before I get into the rotation. Like I said, I'll also dive through this on that in the description, but quickly just to note what I'm looking for. The one thing and the only thing that I'm really like have some variability about is once you head towards a less summoned path, you're actually going to want to do Forbidden Knowledge to get some resistances here. But I actually liked buffing the damage and armor of my minions early on here. The rest of them aren't really as negotiable. I think these are amazing. Minion health here is super important. Minion cast speed and attack speed for minions. Then you move over to the advanced. You really want to get that minion damage and attack speed again. The necrotic damage for minions. Ward retention and gain on minion death. Minion health regen and health regen per second. Increased minion health. I just started speccing into this more heavily. I only had this at 4 initially just to move through the tree, but towards the end I'm coming back to this to get more health. Minion armor shred chance. This is super important because as you get a ton of those minions out, the more armor shred that they will have. Then I play into attack speed again, cast speed, fire and necrotic. Super good combination ability, seeing as our whole build is fire and necrotic, and then necrotic again, and then an additional mage. For the rotation for this build, for the most part, I'm going to be making sure all my minions are out first, using my D button to put them in specific locations as I'm running up to a fight. I will use D to charge them in. So like I said, that is just your minion attack command, but it also helps focus them if you see somebody you want to burn down fast. Outside of that, I will summon my golem to keep being in the front by keep using him to heal him up by pressing the R button. But honestly, if he's anywhere in mid to low health, you don't really need to touch him until he's getting very low, or you really want to teleport him across the screen to go fight somebody. Outside of that, I'll reposition with my teleport, but the entire time I am going to be summoning my wraiths as much as possible, and in the downtime using my blood rip to gain some of that back and to keep me healed up while my wraiths are still at 6. Okay, while I'm still using wraith, even while I'm using blood rip, I can focus my minions around. So you really want to just be using your blood rip as your last resort, using your wraiths until you get up to 6, and you want to focus them onto whoever your focus of the target is. And that is the play style. Teleport out to stay safe, stay out of the zone with teleport, and just keep rushing your minions in with a minion attack command. Although it's not on the skill bar, minion attack command is the best skill that you have. This is just my leveling and early endgame build. I'm going to transition it a little more, but I'm finding a lot of success with this still. I haven't run into much issue, even soloing all this content by myself. So I do think this build is incredibly strong, but I've got some ideas of where I want to test stuff in the future. I'll keep you guys updated, so keep it locked here. Hitting that subscribe button and everything down below is the best way to support me. Love y'all, and I'll see you very soon. I literally can just send the minions out and just hold my heal Q button and never use the potion because they're all healing me so fucking much. Oh god. Spoke too soon. Spoke way too soon. Bye. Just flying, baby.